Now, I think it's fair to say that Harley-Davidson aren't exactly doing that well at the moment.
But with a new CEO and a new strategy, well, I guess they're very much hoping to turn things around. And that new strategy? Well, it's not entirely new, with one of the models announced for 2027 being a Sportster. And not one of those newfangled liquid-cooled models, but actually a proper air-cooled Sportster with an engine that's effectively decades old. So naturally, that's got me wondering, well, can it possibly be the right thing to do to revive your sales in 2027 by bringing back what is a fairly antiquated motorcycle, or have they actually hit the nail right on the head?
So you know what? I think I need to ride one again to find out. And also, Tim, maybe get a bit of a second opinion. I should say though, Sportsters go way further back than my biking experience, to 1957, I believe, when the first one was introduced. It's interesting when you look at like a full list of all of the significant changes to the Sportster lineup over the years, because it basically, you know, it's been around for so long, it sort of reads like a broader timeline of motorcycle developments. Electric starters in 1967, left side gear change and disc brakes in the 70s, a 5-speed box and the belt drive in 1991, an electronic speedo in 1995, fuel injection in the mid-2000s. But what I think has defined the generations, the key generations of Sportster over the years, more than these little incremental changes, has almost certainly been the engine. So in the first instance, it was the iron heads. Tim, have a stab at why they're called iron heads?
Is it because they're made of iron?
Well done, mate. Absolutely. And they're still sought after nowadays for being very original, very raw, soulful, of course. But after that, it was the Evolution engine, or the Evo. So yeah, a big American air-cooled V-twin. It came in around the mid-80s, and I believe, I've not ridden one, but the original version of this engine was known for being a little bit vibey. So in the mid-2000s, they changed a few things about it, but the key thing they changed is that they rubber mounted it in order to make the bike more comfortable. And that's one of the things I really like about the Evo engine. When you start it up, it sort of bounces around in the frame, and when you rev it, it wobbles around as well. It really feels like a living thing. Like so many good engines though, recently, it did eventually fall foul of emissions regulations. I think it was killed off in Europe and the UK with Euro 5. And understandably, with it being an engine that goes back pretty much 40 years, in order to update it, to get it to pass modern day emissions regulations, well, it was just too much work, and so it got discontinued and kind of replaced with this. This is the Revolution Max. It's a liquid-cooled engine, a lot more revvy, hence the name. And it was put to use in this, the Nightster, the Sportster S, which is a more aggressive-looking version of this with a big fat front tire, but also the Pan America Adventure bike. And so yeah, a versatile engine, modern feeling, good performance, most importantly, good emissions as well. But it's got to be said, it has a certain clinicalness, perhaps. And so I don't think it's quite generated the same adoration amongst the Harley buying public as, you know, the original air-cooled Sportsters.
Well, maybe I'm being a little too gentle there, because if the UK sales figures are anything to go by, well, the Revolution Max bikes have been a bit of a flop. That Nightster, for example, well, there's about a couple of hundred on the road here after 3 or 4 years of being on sale. But if you look at the previous air-cooled Sportsters, of which admittedly there are many, many variants, well, there are still many thousands of them if you take the time to add them all up. So I guess it doesn't really take a genius to figure out why Harley's financial results of late have been a pretty tough read. Personally, I'd say the whole reason you buy a Harley-Davidson isn't for performance or efficiency, but it's for a really loud, really vibey bike that makes a bit of a statement, something the Revolution Max Nightster couldn't really offer, but an Evo-powered Sportster absolutely can offer in spades.
So yeah, to give us the best chance of finding a proper Sportster to ride, we've come to Superbike Factory. They've got a whole bunch of shops across the UK, thousands of bikes, And so surely they got one here.
So after a little perusal, we settled on this beauty, and it was time to send it through the workshop to see some of the changes that Superbike Factory have made to prepping their bikes. You see, every bike goes through an inspection before any repairs and prep work are needed to get it ready for the showroom floor, and then after that it's road tested by one of their techs. Recently though, they've changed some of their suppliers for more premium brands, so all the bikes, for example, are getting fluids from Motul, and the tyres are from Pirelli now if they do need to be swapped out. On top of that, they've extended their warranty out to 90 days as standard, and all bikes are now getting a minimum of 6 months MOT across the board. Then, they've also scrapped their admin charges, so the price you see on the website is the price you pay, and so it's great to see Superbike Factory pushing to improve the standard of the bikes you'll see in their shops and on their website. In fact, there's a link in the description below if you do want to browse all of their extensive stock. And so a massive thanks to them for supporting the channel and making this video possible. This one though, well, it didn't need much at all. She's in great condition already, and so once the prep process is done, well, we can get it outside for a proper good look at it.
Now, before we get on the road, I thought I'd give you a quick overview of the particular model that I picked out, which is this, an Iron 1200. What a beautiful looking bike, and it's in good nick as well. It's roughly 8 to 9 grand for one of these. It's a 2021, and it's only got about 1,500 miles on it, so it's still looking pretty fine. I will say though, I've got to manage your expectations of just how quick or not quick it might be out on the road, because despite the fact that it's got the bigger 1200 V-twin, well, they don't even specify a peak power figure on the official Harley specs. They only say torque, and to be fair, this engine is all about torque, and it makes 99 Newton meters peak. But according to Google, my extra research there, it makes around 60 or 65 horsepower peak, which is not necessarily going to impress many people from a 1200 twin. On top of that, you got to combine it with a weight figure that's fairly hefty as well. It comes in at over 250 kilos when all the fluids are on board. And so yeah, with about 60 horsepower and over 250 kilos, it's got a power to weight ratio that's about as impressive as a cabbage. It's a chassis that's not necessarily set up for sporty handling either. It's got a single front disc. The fork is about as skinny as a pair of chopsticks. It's very long and low. It's 650-ish mil in the seat height, so very low down. Forward pegs, ape hanger style bars, but all the same, I'm massively looking forward to riding it. I think it looks fantastic, and also it's got these Vance & Hines pipes, which are rather minimal, let's say, and I think are going to sound pretty amazing. In fact, I'll fire it up for you now so you can hear it, and then we'll get going. Quite loud then, or?
Might need the float files, yeah. That's it was peaking.
I don't know if I could live with that, but for today it'll definitely add a bit of
drama,
enjoyment and drama.
I'll be surprised if you can hear a thing I'm saying, but let's do our best. Now, we'll start with the less good stuff about this bike, which I think is fair to say is probably the way that it turns or attempts to turn, and also you could say the same for the stopping power. It ain't dancing side to side in the same way that a naked bike would, and it needs lots of rear brake to get it to stop. It stops quite quickly if you use both, but if you're someone who's used to using just the front, you might want a bit more from it. So yeah, it's not something to rush into corners like this one. There's obviously a lack of ground clearance as well, but I think it's best ridden at about, 75%. Then it just kind of nicely wafts along, and the weight actually isn't that bad. 250 kilos, and so it does become quite pleasant and not too much of a handful either. Comfort maybe is another suboptimal area perhaps on this bike. I don't find the rear shocks particularly cushy, and of course all your weight is on the seat, so if you do hit any largish undulations in the road, then you will feel them right through your backside. But I'd also say I've been pleasantly surprised by the riding position. Normally I'm someone who prefers cruisers with flat bars, mid-position pegs as well, so it's closer, let's say, to a traditional naked riding position. But this one, because it's not too massive, despite the fact that the bars are high up and the pegs further forward, well, I actually find it quite nice for my size at 5'9" or 175 centimeters. And yeah, I'm not reaching too hard for the pegs out front. Then, if you're someone who's a massive fan of all the latest tech as well, then it might not be the first bike you think of buying. But then again, what's viewed as a weakness by one biker might well be viewed as a big positive by another, especially those who appreciate a simple analog feeling ride. Personally, I think it pairs very well with the attitude of the rest of the bike, and the bits of tech that are there are fairly well thought out conveniences that don't feel too invasive. So keyless works fairly nicely on this bike, and I pretty much always appreciate self-cancelling indicators, and it also reminds you to put your side stand up on the dash, which it's not cutting edge stuff, but I've got to say there's been a couple of occasions where I've appreciated that. Anyway, on to the very good stuff. This motorcycle looks phenomenal. Wherever we park it up, wherever we take some video or pictures, just looking at it in the showroom back there, I think it looks absolutely class, and I can totally understand why someone might put that as a high factor when they're looking at buying a bike like this. The proportions are aggressive, it's kind of classic but modern and mean. And also I love this kind of blacked out with just a pop of Americana in those graphics on the tank, which I think set it off perfectly. Looks are definitely in the pros column for me. I'd love to know what you guys think of it though in the comments. But without doubt, number one, the biggest thing that I love about this bike always was and still is the Evo. I'm sure you can hear this ridiculous Vance & Hines pipe anyway, but let me pop my lid up and give it some proper welly. Woo! Now I'm sure there's plenty of you who think it's way too loud, and I don't think I could own a bike like this. I think it would eventually become too irritating, but just for a blast today, and I know there are some people who do like bikes this loud, I've got to say it really does put a massive grin on your face when you properly open it up. It's not fast though. I mean, it's not an engine that you're gonna be super excited by under acceleration. Its limitations are clear for all to see on the spec sheet, but it's just so addictive. Not just the sound, but also the feel of it. Oh my god. Okay, it's vibed the camera loose there. I probably didn't do a great job of putting it on, but all the same. Yeah, it's rubber mounted now, but still not vibe free. But I think it's fair to say the vibes are still part of the fun. When it's just ticking over, it never makes like a consistent sound. It's always and that's what makes it feel like a living thing. That's what makes it feel organic. That's what makes it feel alive, and it just continues to feel that way all through the rev range. And I can just see how this is a bike that you could absolutely grow to absolutely love. What a machine. Love it. It makes me want one so much, even though that would be a a terrible financial decision to add another bike to the collection, but I do love it. Mate, I need some independent verification of my opinions here.
Okay.
I don't know if you fancy being the crash test dummy.
Gladly. I'm going to be singing Freebird to myself as well, I'll be doing. Oh, that's got a shake to it.
Come on then, mate. Good?
Yeah, very unique. There is nothing that feels or sounds or looks anything like this.
Best thing about it?
The visceral feeling. There's no switching off. You are experiencing this thing on every level.
I do really want one, but I don't think it's a great decision. What about, should we go halves?
Yeah, let's do a timeshare on this one, yeah. I'll see it on weekends.
So what do you think? One of the best engines ever made? Or is it just an underpowered pooch? For me, I'm on the side of the former, but as always, I'd love to know what you think down in the comments below. Do check out the links in the description as well to see all the bikes in stock at Superbike Factory. A massive thanks to them again for supporting the channel. Hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews like this right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.